everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.
Removing one of those blockers that keeps us from migrating into the Fabric data warehouse easily on today's Tales from the Field. Alright folks, here on the screen you can see I have a blog post that was written by Twinkle Cyril. It'll be in the description of the video, but the main takeaway here is that we now have session scope temp tables for the Fabric data warehouse, and we're going to look at those temp tables today. Alright, let's head over to our Fabric UI and see how temp tables work within our Fabric data warehouse. The first temp table I want to look at, and we have two types, is the non-distributed session scope temp table. This is MDF backed. So on the screen, I have a create table statement here. I have a create table, temp table with some columns. I'm inserting that data into it. And I wanted to see what would happen if I ran my MDF, my non-distributed session scope temp table against a user table. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit run. Ooh, well, we got an error. So we cannot execute MDF-backed non-distributed session scope tables against user tables. So just to summarize, right? Our session scoped non-distributed MDF-backed temp table in the Fabric data warehouse has limited scalability. It's good for small session local operations. It's the default TempDB type within our Fabric data warehouse, and it can be used for insert into TempDB when you're querying against DMVs or system views within the Fabric data warehouse. One of the common reasons I find myself using this is when I want to filter down my query insights DMVs to a smaller set of data, I'll throw it into a temp table and look at it there. All right, it's time to look at the second type of session scope temp table we have within our Fabric data warehouse experience. We have a distributed session scoped temp table within our Fabric data warehouse that we're going to look at now. On the create table statement, I want you to notice something. We're going to throw in a with distributed equals round robin. This is going to make our temp table a distributed temp table, and some power comes with that. So we're going to do our create table, we're going to insert some data, and then I'm going to do that same select against our user table and see what happens here. So let's go up to the top of the screen, let's hit run and see what happens. Well, it's going to create our temp table. We know that. It's going to be a distributed session scope temp table. It's going to be backed by part K. And you can see here now that the power of this distributed temp table allows us to query against our user tables. So let's talk a little bit more about these distributed temp tables. They're Parquet backed. They're recommended for prod workloads. They have unlimited size, integrates with our distributed user tables, and it allows for insert into our user tables from our temp table. With a few minor changes to our existing code, we can now transfer over those stored procedures that we're using temp tables and make these few tweaks, right? Put that with distribution equals round robin on there, and we can start using the distributed session scope temp tables in our production workloads. Now, there's a little confusion out there when I talk to folks about these two statements here on the screen when they run this syntax. What about a CTAS, create table as select, or how about a select into from? Well, little bit of a reveal early on, but when you run those types of statements, that syntax within your Fabric data warehouse, they are going to be backed by a session scope distributed temp table. Let's run this create table as select, and then we'll do a select against one of our user tables. Now, we saw early on in our video here that if we were running this against a non-distributed, we would get an error if we were trying to query a user table. So this is just showing me or proving to me that this is a distributed temp table. Same here for our select into from. It's going to execute and it'll execute successfully. Since I think most folks are going to be using the distributed session scoped temp tables, let me review some of the details one more time. They're Parquet backed. They are definitely recommended for prod workloads, unlimited in size, integrates with our distributed user tables, and allows insert into user table from a temp table. Also recall that CTAS and select into from, those are going to be distributed backed as well. All right, there we have it. 2 types of temp tables in the Fabric Data Warehouse. Our non-distributed, right? You're going to use that for testing, joining on DMVs, and our distributed by adding that little bit of syntax there with distribution equals round robin. We can now start using temp tables in our production workloads. I can't tell you how helpful this has been in some of my customers' environments, because it really sped up or even unblocked migrations to the Fabric Data Warehouse, making it easier to transfer over those store procedures that were already using temp tables by making a few minor tweaks. All right, you know where we like to keep this going. In the comments down below, did you see something you like? Is there something you would like to see? Let us know. And as always, be good to each other.
Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna be a good